Good morning, and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public meeting and public hearing for May 19th, 2026. We're going to begin by taking attendance, and I'm going to ask our legal counsel, Mark Silberman, to call the roll.
Vice Chair Master.
Here.
Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Chu.
Here.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Ekwembe. Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Mann.
Here.
Commissioner Wilder.
This meeting is being held in our hearing room at 253 Broadway on the second floor. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on YouTube for anyone who would like to participate remotely. We're going to begin with a public hearing agenda for new applications on our designated properties. Now, I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala.
Thank you, Vice Chair Master, and good morning, everyone. Starting today with public hearing item number 1, that's LPC 26-01803, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2563, Lot 37, 144 Greenpoint Avenue in the Greenpoint Historic District. This is an altered commercial building originally built in 1898. The application is to demolish the building and construct a new building. This was last presented at the public hearing of December 16th, 2025. No action was taken at that time. And I will note that this is being brought back as a hearing item because significant changes were made. So that's why we're seeing it on the hearing item agenda this morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Field, Building Studio Architects, presenting 144 Greenpoint Avenue on behalf of ownership. This is a return presentation. After working through our design with preservation staff and then representing to Community Board 1 in Brooklyn. Recall, this is the site of the Le Polonaise near the corner of Greenpoint and Manhattan Avenues. This is our previous design, which had 55 dwelling units. We have changed the setback, increasing the density to 60 units. The prior presentation had arched windows with square proportions, brick detailing, and a partially visible setback floor above the cornice. Some of your concerns from the last presentation included proportions, organization, and detailing of the facade, the lack of vertical energy, penthouse visibility and quieting, setbacks, materiality and cladding, consistency of lot line windows, and the street base with greening and maintenance over time. So this is at the corner of Greenpoint, at the corner of the district, but Greenpoint and Manhattan Avenues. The site is shown here. This is some of the neighborhood context. This is a building on the corner of Manhattan Avenue and Greenpoint with a vertical double hung windows and a much more vertical treatment than a tall building. These are some of the residential buildings, again, with verticality in the windows. This reclad at 807 Manhattan Avenue is a more modern approach. These are the tenements along Greenpoint Avenue. You'll see they're taller and more regular. Some examples again from the prior of our window detailing. The block front along Greenpoint Avenue has the tall tenements to the north. Our side of the street is much more corrugated. Zooming in, you'll see the differences in heights along the south side of Greenpoint Avenue, and then around the corner at our proximate corner on Manhattan Avenue. Our prior building, we had aligned generally with the tenement context across the street. Here we have pushed the 6th floor setback forward. Our height at the street wall has increased, but it is concealing and reducing the visual cacophony of the penthouse above. Previously, Proportions in our street base were squat and staccato. We have increased their verticality and studied the base condition without planters. This is the zoning and massing of the building. You can see the 6th floor is now pushed forward. That sight line then occludes the 7th floor setback, which remains unchanged. These are now views from the street. You can see the 6th floor setback pushed forward conceals the penthouse from above. And coming further down the block, the materiality changes and the quieting of the facade. This is oblique from the other side. And from the rear, again, the upper 2 floors of the building are quieted. This is a stucco that's proposed. Our previous view had planters and a more consistent street base. Our proposed facade has detailing at the base. In keeping with the windows, we've removed the arches and we've increased the street wall height. This reorganization of the facade increases the vertical energy typical of the tenement typology in a new modern apartment building. From further down Greenpoint Avenue, in the foreground is the building at the corner, which we looked at earlier. Our building, and you see the corrugation of the street front. Recapping the changes in the facade, it's a red brick, it's a cast stone gray sill at the windows, and a brown cast stone at the street with our corbelling and our arches removed. The stucco is a compatible color to the brick, quieting the building. The detailing at the cornice remains unchanged, but the sight lines are adjusted to conceal the penthouse. Detail of the windows. And I'll pause here for questions following our plans and sections, elevations of the building.
Commissioners, does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Chen?
Refresh our memory, what was the objection to the planters on the ground?
Maintenance over time, primarily. However, when they were shown removed, the base was very consistent and horizontal. We didn't have this slight detailing at the base, and it was regular and kind of brutal where the building hit the street. So we looked at both maintenance over time, but also improving the detailing to the sidewalk.
Thank you. Also, I have a question. I know that you increased the street wall by a floor. In terms of the overall height of the building, can you tell me how it's changed?
So the overall height of the building has actually been reduced 3 feet. We did a little pinching and pulling. We did extend the elevator bulkhead up to activate the roof. The street wall height increased and is still conformant below below maximum street wall height.
And so does this increase your overall FAR and does it increase the residential units that you're?
Correct. It increased the density from 55 to 60. This is a 20% affordable, so we increased another affordable unit. And it did increase the FAR. We are still under on the FAR. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think one of your sections showed it, but how does the height compare to the north side of the street in terms of building street wall face? You had a section, I thought.
It was the sightline section.
Yeah,
It's about 8 feet higher than across the
then
street.
across the street.
In
So
terms
about,
of the street wall, this is the irregular side of the street.
Okay,
Okay.
that's, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Corey, did you have a question?
I just wanted to ask for some clarification on the windows. Could you explain the way that the windows on the front facade operate? Because I think that's a change and you didn't really address that.
The windows are a simulated double hung. It will be affixed over an awning.
So the upper
Because,
sash is fixed.
so the upper sash is fixed and the lower sash is awning.
Is that something where the details are still under development?
The details are being worked on and under development. We'll work on with staff. They can't do a double hung window of this scale doesn't work today.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Do we have anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that we don't, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Zoom participants wishing to speak, please raise your hand. After your name is called, you'll be promoted to panelist. We ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker is Historic Districts Council.
Good morning, this is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds that revisions to the proposal have improved aspects of the design, including the window proportions and the ground floor treatment. However, we have some concern that the additional height of the street wall makes the building feel less compatible with the immediate surrounding context than the earlier iterations of the proposal. We believe a setback at the top floor would better relate to the scale of the neighboring buildings and reduce the visual impact of the added floor. HDC also believes that the facade composition could be improved with stone sills rather than brick. Thank you.
The next speaker is Christina Conroy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society. Now, we write in general support of this improved design with a couple of suggestions. The design should include more heft and detailing on the brick cornice at the top of the facade. This would better reflect the strong cornices that are a unifying feature of historic buildings in the district, including the one that was on site before it was severely altered. Now, the applicant suggests this in a half-hearted way with the slightly projecting cornice blocks terminating at the end of the cornice. We also think it would be useful to incorporate a second material at the sills or lintels to break up the very large expanse of brick. Finally, we think the additional floor brings the building just a bit out of scale with its context. We prefer the sixth floor to be a set back addition as in the previous design. Thank you, Commissioners.
Do we have any other participants on Zoom wishing to offer testimony? All right, seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 1 recommends approval.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Mahan, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Chu, I'd like you to start, and I actually have some notes from the last time,
Okay,
just as a little reminder.
thanks.
Last time you were okay with the street wall height, but you had some issues with the window shape. You thought that perhaps it could be more contemporary or vertical. And you said that the mass of the penthouse was too prominent, and you wanted some more consistent materiality. Recoat plaster cladding at the side is preferred, and you felt uncomfortable with the planters at the sidewalk level.
Okay, great, thank you. In terms of the changes, I can see that the overall strategy for a taller street wall facade does make a more singular volume, which I am in favor of. I do feel that the height is a little bit higher than feels comfortable right now in the current context, but I'm also thinking about the increase in density that will come. There's still lots next door that I see changing in the future. In general, I think that the proportions of the window and the vertical expression is an improvement. It feels more like a fabric building that has relationship to the residential housing and apartment buildings across the street and on the same street. I think the base revision is improved. I felt that the planners essentially pushed the passersby away from the facade. In this sense, I feel that the building has a better connection to the ground plane and in proportion relate better to the neighboring building and the buildings across the street. The double hung approach, I think, again, is in keeping. I'm okay with that. I actually feel fine with the singular material, brick expression and relief within that singular material. I don't feel a great need to change the sills on the punch windows above. And I appreciate the sense of not a large looming mass of floors on top, which would not really be hidden on the street. In general, I'm in favor of the revisions. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ikembe, last time you said that the organization and size of the windows should be reexamined. You also felt that the planters were intrusive, and you had suggested perhaps they play with relief at the upper stories and the side. You wanted them to explore the side materiality, and you said the penthouse should not be visible over the street wall.
And based off of the verticality, I believe the window proportions and the heights do work together as being more cohesive. I also believe that how the building hits the ground plane is much improved as well. And I believe it works very well with its neighboring buildings as well. I had a concern about the visibility of the penthouse, which is no longer visible. So I'm in agreement with that. And overall, I find what is being presented to be acceptable.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, you felt that the design was generally appropriate as it was, but you also wanted the penthouse perhaps to be set back. You said the guardrails at the penthouse were too visible. You were fine with the windows. You liked the planters and were more, I guess, satisfied with the previous version.
So in general, I agree with my fellow commissioners. This is appropriate and in a number of ways better. I would like to say that given the varied height of buildings on the street, I find the height fine. My one comment is I would have preferred for two reasons the casement windows and instead of the double hung. Reason one is they would be more vertical, which I think would help. And reason two, they'd be more energy efficient. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just interject and say that what the applicant tried to clarify was that these would be the simulated double hung that do have the operable panel that's not an actual double hung.
So then I might not do the simulation to give greater verticality, but that I'm glad to hear that, and I can find this appropriate.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chen, you liked the brick materiality, the details. You felt the articulation was good. You were undecided about the planters, but you felt that the details of the penthouse should be refined.
Thank you for that reminder. And I remain fond of your detailing of the brick. I think you did a great job, especially with the corners, the corbelling going up. I have walked so many streets seeing missing cornices that for lack of maintenance, this is a way of preserving it. Just like Stephen and the rest of the commissioner, I think it's an improvement with the vertical proportion. I think the verticality. And I think I have no problem with the simulated double hung. I think it lends to the character of the neighborhood. I leave it up to you on the planters. I think if upper levels of the base, if there's flower planters there, if the tenant feels that they want to put it there. I do, however, the one note that I think the verticality at the base, the proportion seems excessively tall, but I can find it appropriate, but I just thought that proportionally, based on the scale and the proportion, I just thought the base a little bit too vertical, but do not know what the alternate solution is. So, but I think it's nicely improved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mahan, I believe you weren't here when
I
we
saw
first
this.
presented. Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I
Okay.
don't have notes for you. Oh, wait. Oh, no, I do. Sorry. So you wanted to know which side of the street they were trying to relate to. You wanted more individuality. You wanted the window proportions to have a clearer concept. Brick materiality is okay. You were okay with the height. And you commented on the materiality at the side that should be refined.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in favor of the changes made here. I think it's actually transformed what was a somewhat complex application into a kind of straightforward one in a positive way. You know, it's a nice fabric building now. I'm okay with the increase in height given the much improved proportions of the front facade and the way the proportion of the windows and sort of the articulation within that facade are improved. We had spoken last time about how one side of the street has quite a bit of variety in height and scale, which I think is this side. The opposing side, has more uniformity. And so given that variety, immediately adjacent to this building on the left and right, I'm certainly okay with the increased height. It has the effect of simplifying the massing greatly. So I support the refinements, the materiality, the windows, verticality. I'm okay with the double hung. That seems appropriate, the simulated double hung, I should say. So I can find this appropriate.
Thank you. I'll also comment, as we only have 6 commissioners right now. So I also think that you've made significant improvements on the windows. The verticality, I think, just makes it look much better. I think that increasing the street wall is a good solution here in terms of reducing the visibility of the penthouse. And I think that because of the variety in the streetscape, I think that it works in this situation. And I'll also note that, you had overall reduced the height of the building. And, we have the benefit of adding more residential units here. I didn't really have a problem with the planters, but I do like what you've done here. And I think that the materiality of the front facade is good. So I can also find this appropriate. Commissioner Chu, would you like to read the motion?
Sure. In the case of LPC 26-01803, 144 Greenpoint Avenue, Greenpoint Historic District, an altered commercial building originally built in 1898. Application is to demolish the building and construct a new building. I note that the existing building is highly altered and not one for which the Greenpoint Historic District was designated. I further note that the streetscapes along Greenpoint and Manhattan Avenues, the main commercial thoroughfares in the district, are comprised of a variety of building types, including 2- and 5- to 5-story mixed-use residential buildings, banks, institutional buildings, and 1-story taxpayers. I recommend approval, finding that the existing building has been combined and modified throughout its history, resulting in a loss of all significant architectural or historic features. Therefore, its proposed demolition will not eliminate a contributing building within the historic district. that the proposed building's 6-story street wall plus setback penthouse and additional bulk, while slightly taller than the other buildings, will be proportional to its wide street frontage and consistent with the surrounding streetscape, which include a variety of institutional, mixed-use, and residential building types and heights and street wall conditions, and will not call undue attention to itself. That the penthouse and bulkheads will not be visible from directly across the street and will be moderately visible as part of the new building only over the secondary facades above the much shorter neighboring buildings and at a distance along Greenpoint Avenue. That the above-ground footprint of the building will be smaller than the existing building to be replaced, resulting in a new courtyard and more open space within the block. That the vertical proportions and solid to void ratio of the proposed primary facade will harmonize with the fenestration patterns found at tenement buildings in the surrounding streetscape. That the proposed materials and details of the primary facade, featuring red brick cladding and window surrounds, metal spandrel panels, an articulated cast stone base and bulkheads, a corbelled brick cornice, and 1/1 metal windows with a dark finish will harmonize with the variety of materials and details of the other residential buildings in the streetscape and historic district. That the contemporary design of the new building will recall and reflect the layering of old buildings of various periods and styles found throughout the historic district. That the materiality and massing of the secondary facades and setback penthouse, featuring brick returns, red stucco, and standing seam metal-clad bulkheads, will be in keeping with the variety of traditional treatments of secondary facades and rooftop accretions along the surrounding commercial thoroughfare, and that the proposed new building will enhance the special architectural character of the streetscape and the Greenpoint Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumbe, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Quembe, Commissioner Mann.
Aye.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
That's been approved. Thank you. Let's move to the next item.
The next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 26-08566, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2563, lots 23 and 25, 122 and 124 Greenpoint Avenue in the Greenpoint Historic District. This is a taxpayer building and a Beaux-Arts-style firehouse built circa 1910. The application is to demolish the taxpayer building and construct a new building, replace windows and doors, demolish the rear portion of the firehouse, and construct rooftop and rear yard additions.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Barry, Principal of Upper Studio Architecture. I'll be presenting the proposal for 122 to 124 Greenpoint Avenue in the Greenpoint Historic District. The existing site is composed of 2 lots, one containing a 1908 Italianate limestone fronted firehouse, which has been vacant for several years at 124 Greenpoint Avenue, and adjacent to it is a 1-story taxpayer building, originally built in the 1800s as a wood frame and demolished and replaced in 1931 with the current brick structure. The site is located on Greenpoint Avenue between Franklin and Manhattan in a mixed, commercial overlay district. The context, working from, I can see this good, working from east to west, is varied with a variety of building types and heights. The subject site containing the firehouse and the 1-story taxpayer, and then to the west, a more consistent context of 4 or 5 and 1 6-story brick-fronted, primarily mixed-use buildings. Our site is basically this juncture between the sort of more consistent context to the west and the more varied context to the east. Looking at the block plan, the property contains a 1-story building and then the 2-story firehouse. The buildings along Greenpoint Avenue are very deep. They come mostly almost to the rear lot line. You can see the predominant four-story buildings in yellow, some three-story buildings flanking the site actually, and the occasional five-story and six-story buildings. On Milton Avenue to the rear is a series of row houses, 2, 3-story predominantly, which have rear yards and share the block. We'll have some visibility from Milton Street. The existing building in historic tax photos, the original firehouse on the left, which was replaced with the current Italianate building in 1908, and then the 1980s photo. The one-story building, which it was used basically as a poultry slaughterhouse for many years until it was abandoned, and is now in disrepair. The existing building has, also the firehouse has also fallen into disrepair. It's been painted. There's a landmarks violation currently, which will be corrected. The one-story taxpayer is also having structural issues and is in disrepair. The existing building, the firehouse building at 124, will be restored and with the limestone, repair, paint stripped, new windows, new entry, and the one-story building will be demolished. So this is the scope of demolition for the proposed project. We'll be retaining a portion of the firehouse at 124 to a depth of 24 feet, retaining a good amount of the existing bearing walls and removing the floor and ceiling and a portion of the rear walls to achieve the 20-foot setback for the new mixed-use building. The 122 Greenpoint Avenue building will have a full demolition. Upper floor plan of the firehouse. And the demolition section will be lowering the slab with bench footings and retaining floor and roof surfaces at the front portion of the building. Some more site photos, existing context. The site is flanked by lower buildings, 3 stories, lower than the typical 4-story or 4-story plus buildings on the block. The rear of the existing firehouse, it's a bit in disrepair, wood windows with no discernible significant details at both floors. Some views of the rear of the 1-story building. Simple brick facade, no discernible significant details. So on the right, we have the demolition scope, portion of the firehouse, and the 1-story taxpayer building. On the left is our site plan and massing plan. We're retaining the height of the existing firehouse. We're doing a series of setbacks, 23 feet, a recess actually, 46 foot and 58 foot, so that no addition over the firehouse will have any visibility from the street. At the adjacent portion of the lot, we're proposing a 4-story street front with a number of setbacks up to a 69-foot 6-inch maximum height. The maximum allowable height for the district is 75 feet or 95 feet for an affordable housing project. So our proposed building is at 69 foot 6. And we're also stepping back at the rear to reduce the bulk as it affects the rear yards and the visibility from Milton Street. So in the massing, we have a new proposed masonry facade, retaining the front portion of the firehouse, retaining the floor levels of the front portion of the firehouse so that the spaces retain their height and their reading from the street. The building entry will be through the firehouse itself with a new storefront created entry to reflect the details of the existing building or the historic entry. The four-story street wall of the addition will sit next to it. And then a series of setbacks with a combination of brick sidewalls and aluminum, anodized aluminum clad setbacks in a dark color to complement the brick facade. The window strategy and the facade articulation strategy is based on taking the references from the existing streetscape, the segmented arch windows that are typical on Greenpoint Avenue, repeating that in a larger scale window, more appropriate for a new residential development, higher installation values, more light, more openness, functionality of a casement window, and reflecting that in plan with a series of concave surfaces for each vertical window bay. Again, reflecting that segmented arch shape, and then reflecting that once again in the cornice. The verticality of the facade with the bays of concave windows with the vertical piers in between is intended to coordinate with the firehouse facade, which has a verticality and breaks the horizontal lines of the street wall and the cornices above the storefronts. So front elevation. So we're basically between two 3-story brick buildings. The arched windows, the concave recesses, the vertical bays, but keeping the rhythm of vertically proportioned windows to continue the streetscape, and work with the verticality of the firehouse frontage, which has this this 2-story gesture. The color of the brick is intended to negotiate between the more red brick, typical of the streetscape, and the limestone color of the firehouse. We see this as one building, and the materiality of both having a relationship to each other and coordinating. So detail on the brick facade. This will be a solid modular brick, a variety of patterning, vertical coursing at the recessed concaves to achieve the curvature, and horizontal coursing at the piers. The recessed portions of the setbacks will be the anodized aluminum in the dark bronze color to coordinate with the brick color. So we have the building in context with our 4-story street wall, working with the existing context to the west, and making that transition to the more varied context to the east. The proposed block plan, you can see the 5-story portion here in red, the 20-foot setback at the rear yard, and the various stepping and heights but to achieve the setbacks. In terms of visibility, we have from the west, the first setback at the 5th floor level, and then more minor articulations at the 6th floor. Their view from the center of the street, from across the street at eye level. First setback is visible. From the front again. So basically the whole massing is intended to maintain the autonomy of the firehouse as a part of the streetscape, and avoid having visibility over the firehouse. Go down the street. And the intention of the facade is, the new facade is really to create an appropriate modern building with depth and shadow and detail that is not mimicking existing buildings, but is a good neighbor and a transition as part of a single composition with the firehouse. As we move down the street, the elevator bulkhead would be clad in a lighter metal material, and you can see some of the penthouse setbacks with the aluminum cladding material, less heavy. The view of what's happening at the top from an eye level view, not any street visibility with the various setbacks. Elevations, detailing, brick coursing, solid modular brick. In plan, the windows will be bound by anodized aluminum trim piece, which will frame out the window. It'll also be the sill of the window. So there'll be a sort of a simplified articulation with a slight projection past the face of the brick. And this is a detail of the setback portions of the penthouse faces. On the side facades, you can see the section through the adjacent building and the visible portions clad in horizontal brick coursing from the other direction, from the west. Sightline section. So at the firehouse section, we're maintaining the floor height, the ceiling height. When we look through those windows, we'll see 12-foot tall ceilings is the existing condition. And the ground floor, similar, maintaining the existing height of the firehouse for the lobby space. We're stepping down to create a sort of internal court terrace to give some light to this apartment. And then in our sight lines, we're basically looking over the setbacks for this portion. For the portion to the right, with the 4-story street facade, we're seeing small amounts of railings or penthouses from the one view directly across on Greenpoint Avenue. Cross section with the setbacks. We're doing a skylight through the building that will come down and light the lobby space that then is the generator for some of the massing above. At the entry, we'll be creating a new entry door that reflects the detailing of the historic doors, but functioning as a building lobby entry. From Milton Street at the rear, you can see the setbacks and you can see the sight line from the lower 2-story buildings that are directly behind our site. We'll have the top floor of the addition of the new building will be visible. In terms of the rear elevation, we're also stepping back at the rear, which reduces the bulk of that 6th floor as it would be visible from Milton Street. It'll be a stucco finish and vertically proportioned windows in a brownish stucco color for that rear facade. Views of other parts of Greenpoint context. It's a very varied context with a lot of buildings, newer buildings, more modern buildings visible above the existing streetscape. and just a little bit more on the rear yard. Again, the existing buildings come back very deep. You can see in this slide, for example, the buildings on Milton are very deep and coming back almost to the rear yard line. There's a lot of variety and a lot of very deep buildings on the block. We'll actually be reducing the depth of the footprint from the existing buildings. These are the townhouses across the lot on Milton Street, and a block plan illustrating that. I'm not going to go into detail about the plans unless there's any questions, but basically it's a 10-unit condominium building with a roof terrace and a ground floor retail space at adjacent to the building lobby. I'm going to stop at this sort of head-on view, and George Giannopoulos, the owner, would like to also speak for just a minute, and then I'll turn it over.
Good morning. My name is George Giannopoulos with King's Capital, the developer responsible for the restoration and redevelopment project within the Greenpoint Historic District. From the outset, our approach has been rooted in the mindful preservation, contextual design, and deep respect for the architectural significance of the existing firehouse. Rather than replace the structure, our goal has been thoughtfully to integrate it in the heart of the project in a way that preserves its character while ensuring long-term viability and active future use. The proposed addition has been carefully designed with setbacks and strategic massing to minimize its visual presence and maintain the firehouse as the site's prominent architectural feature, while also introducing a new storefront space that will help activate the street and support the surrounding commercial corridor. We believe the project scale and proportions and material palette result in a contextual addition that is respectful of both the landmark and broader character of the neighborhood. The project represents a significant investment in the restoration of a historic structure that has unfortunately fallen into substantial disrepair, with the intention of preserving it as an enduring part of the neighborhood for decades to come. We appreciate the committee's time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Mahan and then Commissioner Ginsburg.
Few questions for you. Why are you demolishing the rear portion of the firehouse? Rear, I don't know, 2/3 or so of it.
The overall goal is to, obviously develop the site, and with the least amount of visible mass that we can have to achieve that, and part of that is what ties into that is maintaining the existing floor levels, or maintaining a consistent floor level throughout the project. So we basically have the 11-foot 6-inch floor to floor starting from the ground up. This is an elevator accessible building, and there's one area where we can within a unit step and maintain the existing floor, but by setting those floor plates consistently to the maximum extent possible, we're able to create a functional building with an elevator and accessibility maintained, and a lower building with less visibility, while the firehouse itself, what's visible from the street, what you experience, maintains its existing condition.
You're reducing the floor-to-floor height, essentially.
Yes.
At the rebuilt portion.
Yeah. If we were to maintain the floor-to-floor height for both floors, we would have a much taller building overall, and the massing would be affected accordingly.
Understood. Thank you. You mentioned the 20-foot rear yard at, I think, a site plan somewhere at the beginning. And I understand the requirement for the 20-foot rear yard for residential development, but could you explain what's being demolished and removed and put back relative to that 20 feet. Yeah,
So the site plan on the left shows the 20-foot rear yard.
I see.
And so a portion of the firehouse itself, this is actually an error. This line should be here, sorry. And of course, the one-story building goes almost to the full depth of the lot.
Sorry, the firehouse does go to 9'9" from
That's
the.
right.
Okay, today.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be taking off 10 foot
Okay.
with that.
And then what is the material of the firehouse facade now, and what are you doing to it?
It's limestone, and
Okay.
apart from the painting and the graffiti, it appears to be in sound condition.
Okay.
So we would be stripping the paint and restoring and cleaning and patching as required
Great.
of the limestone facade.
One final question, sir. Could you walk me through your window concept again? That particular slide was
Sure.
quite rich, and I wasn't quite quick enough for you.
Okay. So, basically, starting from the existing typical building on Greenpoint Avenue, we're looking at the array of segmented arch-top windows. That is a starting point. The starting point for the whole facade is to have a vertically proportioned window in a series of bays, which is arrayed similarly to the existing context. That's the primary relationship, taking that segmented arch top and repeating it. And then in order to get depth, shadow, and detail on the facade, the sort of invention here, without mimicking historic lintels and sills and other articulations, was to take that arch shape, flip it horizontally, and use it as a sort of an extrusion to get some patterning and texture in those concave recesses on the facade. So here you can see a plan detail of a section of the facade wall.
So I have a number of questions, but the first is, couldn't you keep the rear wall of the firehouse? And if you needed legal light and air, put a skylight above in the setback to get the 20-foot rear yard in the new construction?
If this was a project that qualified as an Article 1, Chapter 5 conversion for New York City zoning, where it's a conversion of commercial or community facility use to residential, that would be possible. In order to achieve that type of conversion, we need to be able to qualify for the prior to 1968 code, the 1938 code. And because our new floor area well exceeds the limitations on that, it's going to kick this into a new code building, in which case we're not allowed to do, we have to maintain the setbacks required by zoning, and we wouldn't be able to do what we often do is have a 5-foot rear.
Have you looked at the new existing building code, which is as I understand it, you can use now, it becomes mandatory a year from now, which I think might solve that issue. I also think the floor-to-floor issue you've talked about, you could change the floor heights within the existing building to solve that issue. So I want to know if you could do that under the existing building code. The next question I have is, how do I know where the commercial entrance is, and where is signage going to be put in the commercial space?
We haven't designed signage. It would be filed by the tenant, but that's something that we could look at.
Okay, because it's also, except for, I can't tell where my entrance is looking at this. It may if it weren't so dark in the rendering. The next issue is your doors at the residential. I understand where you got, but the doors on the firehouse were 2 doors.
They're 2 large sliding doors.
Right.
Right.
Could you do a large swinging door or something that looked more like the historic door? Because this looks very residential in what should look like a firehouse door.
I think, functionality is an issue there. the ease of opening, coming in and out of the building. It's also an exit door, one of the two exits.
Yeah, okay.
But to your last point, structurally, it's much more complicated to keep well, the rear facade issue, I'll look at the existing building code. I'm gonna guess that, we'll see. I can't answer that. But, keeping 3 walls is feasible, structurally much more complicated based on what we're doing. I also don't know, the effect of that is your experience of the building would be exactly the same if we were to do that.
Okay, are the arches real arches? In other words, are you going to have lintels, steel lintels under? Okay, thank
Well,
you.
actually, they are the bottom of the arch. I had the detail. We'll have this. Sorry, I forgot the order. We're surrounding the window opening at all 4 sides with a anodized aluminum extrusion similar to the window material that will basically, and this will be at the sill and the head as well, surround the opening. So we're not going to see a brick shelf like your typical, like the cheap detail, but we will see this articulated piece wrapping.
But if you took that off, would there be a brick shelf or would the brick be self-supporting?
There would be a brick shelf if we took that off,
Okay.
but it'll be obviously recessed with a notch for it.
You'd mentioned before you could have additional height if you had affordable units. Are you going to have affordable units?
This is a 10-unit standard residence.
Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioners, do we have any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and see if there's anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item. Noting that there isn't, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Participants on Zoom wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function. Once your name is called, you'll be promoted to panelist. We ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker is Christina Conroy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the VSNY supports most aspects of this proposal. We normally urge denial of projects where the proposed demolition work will essentially leave only the front facade intact. However, 124 Greenpoint, which hasn't been used as a fire station since 1972, appears to be in a significant state of deterioration. The side walls are minimally detailed, and the handsomely designed front facade will be cleaned and restored. The demolition of the adjacent taxpayer 122 Greenpoint will not detract from the streetscape or district. The new building is well scaled for the district. The red brick proposed for the street facade is a material seen in many buildings in the area. And those proportions of the street facade and upper floors, which can be seen from the sidewalk, have been carefully designed in a way which will actually add interest to the streetscape. Our only concern is the use of single material for the front facade. We believe the use of slate or cast stone windowsills or brick sills in a contrasting color would add visual interest to the building and help it better relate to its historic neighbors. Thank you, Commissioners.
The next speaker is Historic Districts Council.
This is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC is concerned that the rooftop addition is overly complicated in its massing and quite visible from the street view. We recommend the applicant restudy the rooftop to diminish its visual impact on the historic district. In addition, we believe the facade would benefit from greater articulation and material variation. We encourage the applicant to incorporate more substantial sill and base materials such as stone or limestone elements to provide additional depth and texture. Thank you.
The next speaker is Melissa Kravitz-Hoffner.
Hi.
You may begin.
Hi, I'm Melissa Kravitz. I'm a neighbor at 118 Greenpoint, and we're concerned about the height of the building and if it's justified with the distribution of space. They're not increasing density or adding any affordable units, so we're not sure it warrants a variance for increased height in our landmark designated area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. The next speaker is the user Nahana Eli.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, good morning, commissioners. My name is Nahana Eli, and I also live on this street. So today I'd like to testify about both this application and 144 Greenpoint Avenue, which was discussed earlier today. And I'd ask the commission to consider both of these proposals together. These two substantial new buildings on the same block will together reshape this stretch of historic district in a way that neither application individually analyzes. And I don't believe either applicant has examined the cumulative effect. And I'd ask the commission to do so before issuing any certificates. The block today, as both applications have mentioned, on this side of the street has a varied facades. It's low to mid-rise buildings, some small commercial, 19th century residential. So approving both of these really large buildings will completely change the mass of the street. And there hasn't been any analysis of the combined visual impact on the district. So I'm not asking the commission to reject the proposal. I'm just asking that it not be considered in isolation because it will drastically modify the character. Thank you.
Do we have any other participants on Zoom wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 1 recommends denial unless the applicant reevaluates the roof massing, setback visibility, window and facade details and configuration, brick color, and bulkhead materials, as well as providing rear renderings and addressing the impact on neighbors' light and privacy.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? If not, let's go ahead and close the, oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to address the comments?
No, I have no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Wilder, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So move.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumbe, would you second that? Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Mahan, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Very interesting application. Very, unusual pair of sites here and complex context, adaptive reuse and a new building, converting them into one. So lots to think about, really an interesting project. And I want to compliment the applicant, firstly, in their investment in, quality architecture and development here. There's an investment in, real materiality and investment in detail and lots of neat features to like skylights and courtyards and things that are unusual. I'd like to back up and think together a little bit about the identity of this development, particularly its relationship to the existing historic firehouse building. And that's the issue that honestly I struggle with most. And I think if there were greater clarity could help to justify, various design decisions relative to facade treatment, to, rooftop massing and so forth. And so I essentially struggle with the um, wondering, is this imagined as one building or as two? It was stated that we see this as one building, and certain design decisions point to that. The secondary facade treatment, the aluminum scalloped facade at the rooftop bridges across both buildings, suggesting a kind of singular building. But that statement and those moves are undercut by other elements, such as the approach to the facade design, which appears to propose that these are two distinct buildings, along a kind of row of many distinct party wall buildings all the way up and down the block, suggesting kind of autonomy of the firehouse. So I think a sort of greater clarity from the applicant might help to drive different design decisions that would reinforce that particular identity. And I don't have an opinion or a horse in the race if it should feel like one or two buildings. I think that's up to the applicant. But I think clarity, perhaps would help. So let's, nonetheless consider the building on the merits that we have. So to me, looks like two buildings. I'll start with the new building facade in particular. I think that the treatment of the facade, particularly the sort of planimetric depth, needs reconsideration. I appreciate the attempt to kind of reinterpret the segmented arch windows in plan, but I find that it's too discordant with the immediate context when it is turned in plan. The vertical piers from ground to cornice become primary. It reminds me personally actually of more of a Minoru Yamasaki building than a kind of modern interpretation of the immediate context, which feels out of place to me. I think the windows are too large relative to the proportion, and so generally, need rethinking. I think the ground floor relationship to the upper floors should be more differentiated, connote retail more clearly with its own entrance. Even the sort of choice of materiality is a little bit unsure of itself, I might say, with the kind of brick saying, the applicant mentioned that the brick selection is a halfway point, a mediation between the limestone coloration of the firehouse and the red brick. So, again, are we one building, are we two buildings, or are we somewhere in between? So for me, that's really the main issue. I think there are other, no less important issues, but they, all these other things might fall in line with greater clarity and about the identity. I wanted to mention the firehouse itself. That's the historic building. That's the thing that's there to preserve. Nonetheless, I would be okay and might suggest the applicant think about how to connote the adaptive reuse or the change even more clearly. Should the doors, for example, feel more residential? God forbid, should there be an awning, a marquee connoting the entrance? I think things like this, can signal, the positive reuse of historic buildings. Couple other thoughts. I think the rooftop, is too complex, and we do see it from certain vantage points, both from this street and from the rear. And I think a simplification of it would be positive. I think the rear facade Also, the sort of window articulation and materiality should be simplified as well. So I think there's, a lot of creativity here. There's a lot to like. It's an exciting project. And I can't wait to see it again. I'm fond of it, but I do think it needs some further thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Chu?
Thanks. I think Commissioner Mahan hit several topics, and I have thoughts about them as well. I think the first thing is I do appreciate keeping the historic firehouse facade. I know it's not the original, but it's 1908, and that's quite historic in this neighborhood. And that facade to me is really what adds to the variety and character of this historic district, and I'm happy to see that remain. In terms of the addition, and I think I want to look at that from several perspectives. The first one is the decision for the materiality. So brick is chosen, and I think brick is perfectly acceptable as the material of choice in terms of its context. Clearly, the applicant has used that brick to make a more contemporary, whimsical, playful design here. I think where my concerns lie are the fact that if you have experience working with brick, you really need to understand the meaning of every course, vertically, horizontally, sections, 3 dimensions. I see a very ambitious design, and I'm very concerned about the details because it indicates true white brick. It looks like soap brick to me. You can make wonderful moves with brick, and we've seen a lot of contemporary work done with brick in architecture, but I think they're all, the successful ones are always based in a true understanding of how to detail brick. And I'm looking at countless issues here that I'm concerned about. The arches are in plan scalloped, which I don't mind the expression, but that does complications when you also arch in elevation. These bricks are being cut in so many ways that I feel that the craft will be a concern. Vertical coursing right up against horizontal coursing creates a big joint. I think it may feel very applied and almost like wallpaper as opposed to the true brick material, which I think is the foundation, should be the foundation of this concept because it's all about brick detail. The metal surrounds is a contemporary way to deal with materialities differentiation at the window. I think in general, I agree with Commissioner Mahan. I think the scale is oversized for the residential neighborhood and use here. It's appropriate for the storefront ground floor retail, but above, I feel those are very, very large windows. I think they're probably 9 feet tall. And if they are going to be proposed to be so large, there requires much more thought in the scale and articulation of the window systems inside of them. I'm only seeing a lot of darkness in these renderings. I do see that they're basically a pair with the vertical down the middle, which to me lacks a sense of scale. The question that was raised earlier about the lintel, I think, was a very valid comment because, again, lintels are typically flat in brick, and they will form a wider joint that will become a weep joint. I'm going to see that horizontal right over the arch. I think that, again, studying the detail, the reality of the construction will bring a different result than a simplified rendering. I think it needs a lot more thought. In terms of the massing, I find it very complicated. I don't think that's a problem necessarily, but in this sense, the fact that there are many materials and the massing is very, in combination, feel confused to me. One way to simplify is to keep the materiality simple throughout, and then if you have different massing, it will be more cohesive, but it seems like every turn is a change in material or detail from standing seam to scalloping metal. The rear facade doesn't feel like it relates to the side or the front. I have questions about what exactly the rear facade expression is. Again, I compliment the ambition and I compliment the care that has obviously been put into this design. I just think it needs refinement and an overall thinking of cohesion and expression. The arch does give a sense of recall of the firehouse, but honestly, I don't see it. I see it as Commissioner Mann said, it's an approach to say that these are two different buildings. Their aesthetics are completely different. The storefront, I agree, needs to suggest welcoming more and a greater sense of detail at the street front. The idea of fluting, again, I think is an interesting one. I think there needs to be more study about scale in general of many of these moves. Curves and plan and section are complicated. I'm looking at that cornice now. I'm really wondering what the side elevation and the brick look like if I zoom into that. I'm not sure how to do that, honestly. Okay, so I just think that I've got many comments. I can't say that this is appropriate at the moment. I think it requires more work, but I do appreciate that an attempt to do something unique and articulated in some sense.
Thank you. Commissioner Kembe?
First of all, I'd like to thank the applicant for being diligent in what they brought to us today. Overall, I think it's a very interesting project, and I believe it has the potential to be something very interesting and significant. First of all, I'd like to thank the applicant for paying attention to the existing firehouse, in which they've made a decision to restore it. Next to it, I enjoy the vigor in the study of the approach to the facade to the right. I think it's actually very interesting, and I believe it needs a little more refinement to the point of its existing context and how it's working on the existing streetscape. When it comes to the street wall, I actually find its height acceptable. And I think it still works within the street context. But the articulation and the detailing of the facade need a little more work, and also to be in concert with its existing neighbors. Also, just reading how it's articulated, I see more of a some type of cladding, not really brick. And I also agree that the ground floor articulation needs to be looked at more. And I think overall, I think there's too many ideals going on here at the same time. And what needs to happen is a clear direction needs to be chosen. Is this really about the firehouse? Is it really about this interesting articulation coming from the neighboring windows? And then we have this third, the terrace. And for the site, it's a little too complex. I definitely like to see it simplified some, and especially the views that are seen from its neighbors to be, I guess, more consistent, but also just thought about a little more and be a little more sensitive to its neighbors. I think it's a very interesting idea, and it makes some interesting moments. But overall, I think it needs to be more cohesive, and that I believe a driver for the project needs to be decided.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you to the applicant for the presentation. Thanks for all of our online comments. I find this to be a very interesting project with interesting discussion around a lot of the elements. As we see, it's two different buildings that are, or previously two buildings, or currently two buildings that are being combined to have a singular use as a residential building with commercial on the ground floor. So I do, I think I like the the attempt at the articulation of the taxpayer building. I think it is obviously appropriate to demolish that building and propose a new structure. And I think there's many scenarios where this building can either or this building can complement the firehouse building in many ways. And so I don't necessarily think that this direction is inappropriate. However, I think the context is really making it a challenge to accept this at its current location in relation to the neighboring buildings in terms of material scale. I think the ground floor, it's, even though we know it's commercial space based on the drawings, it's not clear that it's commercial space. And if we're just comparing that to, again, adjacent buildings, there is no differentiation between that ground floor besides just the height of the openings. I think there's opportunity for, I don't know, more articulation or something that settles it down, right? I think it's very strong and it doesn't necessarily, and rigid, and I'm not sure what changes it allows for, but excuse me, I think there are some things that need to be done that can still make this an interesting project. I think, which has been mentioned a lot, the use of brick, it's almost like a risk versus reward thing. The amount of brick being used creates probably more challenges for the overall design that maybe some other materials could help out with. I think the cornice of the brick building is I don't think the design is of the cornice fits well with the overall building and site. I think the height and scale of the windows is too tall. I think there's going to be an entrance at this commercial space downstairs. It's not clear what that is, and it's not clear how that happens from a design standpoint or a functionality standpoint. I think that can make a difference in how we interpret the use of that space. I think the monotone nature of the material color creates some challenges, especially as we look and we have these really dark shadows within these bays. I'm not sure if that's the best way to do that. And in terms of, I think those are my comments for that building. And then for the firehouse, I think there is some kind of searching for an identity, right? Is what type of adaptive reuse are we looking for? Are we wanting this to be a residential building, and for it to feel that way as if it always was one, or are we wanting it to look like a firehouse and it's just adaptively reused as a residential building? I think to Commissioner Mahan's point, the entry could really answer that question, whether it's the doors, whether it's two double doors that are swinging open, or whether it's signage or marquee, whatever you want to call it at the entry. But I do think that something just needs to happen there because it feels flat and legible. And then in terms of the rooftop, Man, I think uh, such a, such a, g- it's such a good building, in my opinion, overall. I'm just struggling with a lot of elements that I don't think are inappropriate for the location and the objective. And I think the rooftop can be scaled back or um, not made as prominent and visible from the street, since it's already doing a lot at the facade. Now it's kind of bringing more attention to beyond that, in the front and the rear. So yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Thank you. So I agree with much of what my fellow commissioners said, but I'm going to go through some comments. I think I appreciate retaining the firehouse, which you really had to do, and the facade effort. I think the entrance, I'd look at, there've been a lot of firehouses converted to residential use, and I might look at that to give some ideas, because the doors now seem to me not to reflect the previous firehouse. That may be inevitable, but I think you could do some more research and quite possibly find a way to make it look more like a firehouse door, or if not, look at what others have done. I agree with Commissioner Chu's comments on wallpaper, and I'd particularly talk about the arches. These are not going to be real arches. These are going to be arches where there is a piece of steel supporting the arch. And those tend to look fake. And I can go, this may be too obscure reference, but when Kahn did the Exeter Library in the 60s, which is a curtain wall building, the brick was not the structure, but the arches on the brick were real arches, so that they didn't need a lintel to be supported, and they just looked real. And I think if you're going to try and do arches, you want to work on that. I also, I'm not sure where you enter the commercial storefront, and also how or where you'd put signage with the system you have. I'm not saying you design the specifics of signage, but where are the locations of signage? And I think, as some other fellow commissioners said, instead of having all the windows of the same size, if those ground floor windows are bigger, taller, and the upper floor are somewhat shorter, it would help differentiate that. As I mentioned before, I think you should check the existing building code, because I think you may be able to keep the rear of the firehouse, which, if possible, I'd like to see. If it's impossible, then I would understand that. And then finally, I think the penthouse is too visible, maybe too much going on, but I also think if it wasn't brick, if it was all some sort of metal standing seam or stucco or something in a light color so it receded, it would definitely help. And then I think the rear facade, which is fairly visible, needs to be a little more designed. So that with that are my comments.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I agree with much of the comments that the commissioners have made. Since Commissioner Ginsburg mentioned about Lou Kahn, Lou Kahn has a famous saying about, what does the brick want to be? And obviously it's an arch. And obviously, Commissioner Chu correctly pointed out, the devil is in the detailing. And Commissioner Ginsburg also mentioned about, one way to design it is actually the true arch. Sometimes you have a steel lintel behind it, and it's bending shape. So, and to Commissioner Mayhem's good point about, I think this building needs to be simplified. I think, first of all, I appreciated the attempt that you're trying to make it a very, very interesting building. I think the building here is, right now, is very, very powerful, it's very dominant. And so your building in context with obviously the deference to the firehouse needs to be carefully complemented. And some of the, I forgot which commissioner mentioned about the oversized windows and the overpowering on the penthouse on the top. Because you have a context to the building to the right of the slide. And I think it's been correctly pointed out, the storefront on the base. I think you do have a small, modest retail store or whatever type of store it may be on the ground floor. So I think the rear facade that needs to restudy. I think the rear facade is not there yet. But overall, I think the commissioners have given you enough suggestions to see how we look forward to seeing a revised design.
Thank you. So I think that, we're going to have to take no action on this. But the good news is that I think overall, the commissioners were supportive of the building being demolished and a new building going up. They liked what you did in terms of preserving the firehouse. And I think you heard a lot of similar comments from the commissioners today, talking about perhaps restudying the style of the facade of the new building, saying perhaps that the windows are overscaled, and that you need more differentiation between the first floor retail and then the upper floors, and also looking for some clues in the streetscape context and studying its relationship with the firehouse building. They also had comments about the firehouse door, whether to make it more residential or, refer back to perhaps other examples of firehouses that have been converted to residential. There was also, comments about the penthouse, that perhaps the massing was a little bit too complex, the materials perhaps a little bit too visible. Some of the commissioners wanted you to retain more of the firehouse building, but that was certainly, up for study. And then some comments about the rear facade, that this design should be restudied. So I think there's a lot of comments that you can look over, and we'll bring you back. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to the next item.
All right, the next item is public hearing item number 3, LPC 25-11236, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1137, Lot 12, 555 Carlton Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District. This is a second Empire-style row house built circa 1869 to 1880, and the application is to legalize the installation of windows, ironwork, HVAC units, and fencing in non-compliance with Certificate of No Effect 24-02150 and Miscellaneous Amendment 24-09709.
Good morning, Commissioners. Marcello Pacheco, Preservation Staff. The item before you is 555 Carlton Avenue in the Prospect Heights Historic District. The building is located on the corner of Dean Street and Carlton Avenue. The application is to legalize as-built conditions built in non-compliance with LPC approvals, as well as some work not covered by the approvals. The building is adjacent to and across, the buildings adjacent to and across from the Dean Street facade fall outside of the boundaries of the district, just showing you here with the cursor. The left photo shows the 1940 condition of the building, followed by a photo of the building at the time of the applications in the middle. A permit for minor work was issued in 2023, approving brownstone restoration and the replacement of the cheek wall at the stoop with simply designed ironwork. This was superseded by a certificate of no effect and amendment in 2024, which approved segmental arch-headed window installations at the primary facades, installing a rear deck above an existing addition, door installations within modified openings, HVAC equipment installations at non-visible portions of the roof, and retaining the cheek walls at the stoop in lieu of their removal. Starting here at the photo of the right, I will highlight some of the work we are reviewing here today. The windows were installed at both primary facades, which retain some of the blocking and feature straight headers. New handrails were also installed at the stoop. We will go over the work at the Dean Street and rear facades and roof in a later slide. This slide shows the existing and previously approved elevations per the 2024 permit and the as-built conditions on the right. And here are the existing and the comparative window drawings broken out here for clarity. The applicant has studied the window conditions along the streetscape and will go further in depth on this slide shortly. Moving on to the Dean Street and rear facades, a simply designed black metal guardrail extension was installed at the balance of the side yard, shown here. And the metal gate and wood fence was replaced with a new 6-foot tall wood fence along the rear facade, the rear yard. You can see a better view of the fence here and some of the existing, previously approved and as-built drawings of the rear. Moving on to the rooftop work, this slide shows the approved locations in the top left at the and minimal visibility diagrams on the right for the approved HVAC installations, and below, shown at my cursor, are the as-built locations. Here are some views of the building, and I'll note at the bottom right that the applicant is proposing to install screening to mitigate some of the visibility over the rear facade. And finally, this slide shows the stoop conditions that were approved, as well as the as-built conditions, and below some conditions found elsewhere on the block. And some more look at the side yard and rear yard. The applicant is here to provide some more context and answer any questions you have. Down arrows and state your name.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, all. Arnold Montag, architect, applicant of 555 Carlton. I'm not sure why I feel like I have to let you know this, but I'm the superseding applicant. Just so nobody throws anything. But the funny thing about this project is when the owner, the previous owner, who was also the builder, came to me and said, I've got a problem with landmarks, go check out this address. I said, hey, I just happen to be leaving the Brooklyn DOB. Let me run over Carlton Avenue's nearby. I'll check it out. And while driving there, in all honesty, I thought I was going to find just a catastrophic disaster, which I've seen in the past. People put up blue stucco or vinyl siding, replacement windows, all that. So when I got there, I honestly wasn't sure which, I was looking and going, what's wrong? Then on closer inspection, of course, I reviewed the previous applicant's drawings, and, it's clear to me about the arched windows being, not installed. However, luckily, they did keep the masonry openings intact, the segmented, the arches there. What I find interesting here, and that's why I was willing to take on this case, was this was not where somebody spec'd out a Palladian window and then put a straight rectangular double hung. Instead, they have that like fascia above the window, but it's only I think it's 3.5. I have a close-up detail in a later slide, but I believe it's 3.5 or 4 inches. So it really is negligible. I don't believe in my heart that it changes the characteristic of the neighborhood. In one of these slides going forward here, I'll show you, I'll just jump ahead here. Just a quick little study. So the blue, oh, I forgot to look here. I'm straining. Okay, so the blue represents the buildings. There are 12 of them on the block. You can see the two blue ones that have the straight arch. The lilac or lavender color is only one building out of the 12. So remember, the blue is two buildings out of the 12. The lavender is one building out of the 12. The gray represent us, the subject property, as well as the rest of the buildings. So I don't believe that it stands out as a sore thumb. I just don't believe that anybody walking by, I personally went to put up the community board posters, prior to the community board meeting. And I went there, it was just around 6 o'clock or 6:30. So everybody was coming off the train, people coming home from work. People started talking to me. Before you know it, I had a crowd of neighbors around me. And no one was telling me like, oh my God, I can't believe what you did. You destroyed this blog. It wasn't, I've been in those situations. And everybody seemed to be at peace with it. So, that's, I just had to put that out, how I do feel, even though the other architects, they should have obviously followed the rules, but again, my thoughts here. Here you could see with the blue, no, I could grab the mouse here, here we go. Right, you can see how small this arch is. It's not really anything that I think the average person, other than architects and landmarks committee members, we look at these things, but I think the average person walking by just not changing much. And one of the things I wanted to stress here is along Dean Street, which is the corner of Carlton Avenue here, the long facade. Across the street, it's the last building that's designated here. And because of that, there's just non-landmark buildings across the street, larger apartment building, office and residential across the street that's looking at the Dean Street facade. Again, I don't think it's doing any harm to them. Overall, the builder, a lot of the things he did, it wasn't like he came in to, like, with a wrecking ball and to do things cheaper, right down to even the address on the building, the 555, custom made. The AC units, he unfortunately put them in the wrong location because there were skylights in the way. They had to move them back, but it wasn't like he saved money. He's willing to do screening. I would defer to the board here to say, do we do a green roof with shrubbery, some type of hedges? Do we do a lattice? Do we do something out of iron? I'll leave it up to you guys, what would be best. Worst case, of course, he can move the units. I'm not gonna sell you on that it cannot be done. Of course, it can be done. Along Dean Street here, the wood picket fence was placed in like and kind, the same fence that was allowed back, I believe it was in the 90s when it became landmark designation. I personally did say to the owner, I think it would be best if he stained that fence. It's just a little bit too new to me, and I think if it was stained or possibly painted black to match the iron railings along Dean and Carlton, maybe it would be a lot better. Again, but we're open to suggestions. The sight line, I said he did move the units, and if you look at the bottom drawing here, this is the as-built condition. So they put them in this L-shaped pattern, which again, it's hard to understand, why, because, there was obviously another solution and they should have come to you. I can't tell you, that this is good. So it's just, something we have to work out. The cheek wall. The funny thing here on this cheek wall, they could have just painted it and repaired it, but the builder actually thought he was doing something better here by, which I believe he was. He removed a portion of the cheek wall, took the railing design from across the street at 544 Carlton, which is right over here. And, he told his iron guy, hey, I want to emulate this. I want, something decorative. I want something ornamental. So he actually wound up spending more money. And again, unfortunately, a misunderstanding and not coming to the board, not coming to the commission, rather. The other iron railings, they're all properly done. It's just the railing on the stoop itself. Right? I think that I cover all four, right? The AC, the fence, the windows, and the railing. Oh, I'm sorry. And in the appendix here, what we added, oops. Let's see. That's the old one, maybe before we sent it back. Up there we go. Whoop. I don't know what happened, but I must have hit the arrows too quickly. I'm trigger happy on those arrows. All right, let me step away from the keyboard. Okay, so you can see, changing the windows is just disastrous because he did beautiful trim work. Again, this was not I always say Home Depot. I think I've been corrected. It's not a big box project with, cheap molding and all. A lot of effort went into this. There we go. A lot of effort went into this project, and it is to me disastrous changing the windows when I feel like it's just such a minimal impact on the neighborhood. And as an architect who loves landmarks and architectural review boards and seeing people improve things, it's something that I really believe here that this is minimal.
Thank you. Are you ready for questions?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
My question is for Corey. So we are here to see if changes that were not originally approved are appropriate. Almost as if it's a new application, they just did the work.
I mean, I think that's the right way to think about it in general, although sometimes the commissioners take into account extenuating circumstances that the applicant might express along the lines of what you've heard just now. But yeah, these are items that were done either without a permit or in non-compliance with our permit, and therefore don't meet the staff rules or have no effect to the point where staff would have been able to say, okay, this is close enough. So that's why you're looking at each of these particular items.
Okay. And then my question for the applicant, do you know whether the owner shared anything why they did not do what was approved?
Basically, the AC was that the skylights were there and they just couldn't move them back enough. And I had him speak to the AC guy also and say what's involved in moving them all. And he also stressed that what we see on a plan, he did leave it a couple of feet away from the skylight. But he goes, what you see on paper is not reality. He goes, when workers have to go up there and service the equipment, it doesn't make sense to be, like standing on a skylight. So he purposely moved them back thinking he was doing the right thing. That's the HVAC contractor. As far as the wood fence along Dean Street, I believe, he just changed it in like kind. He just looked at what was there originally, which was pretty dilapidated and had a chain link fence also along with it. And, he cleaned it up. You can see up there on the top left, what was there. So again, I don't think he did anything wrong, but again, I'm saying to him, hey, you've got some other issues here. I think you should improve that and stain it, or, I know Caroline mentioned that, the rules, there's supposed to be a certain portion of that fence that remains open, like some type of lattice work, and maybe the top 2 feet. So, I told him maybe he has to modify it. Listen, we're talking about a wood fence out of this beautiful brownstone. Worst case, if everybody hates it, we replace it. I'm not going to waste too much energy on that. The railing, what he did here with the cheek walls, cutting them down. Again, he believed by matching what was across the street that he was increasing the value. I do think it looks good. I know it might not be, 100% historical appropriate, but again, I think it's nicer to see a wrought iron railing that's painted to match the adjacent buildings than a cheek wall that, stucco was falling off of.
Can I ask just one final question? Was there anything that was approved that they did do?
You mean specific, exactly?
Yeah, because I'm just confused, as there was an application that came before the board that everybody reviewed and agreed on, and so far, 100% of what I've seen is different from what was approved.
Yeah, so I think you just answered the question.
Got you. Okay.
And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and lie to anyone.
Any other questions? Commissioner Chu?
What was approved for the extent of the fence that where the wood is now?
Marcello, do you have the answers to that?
Yeah, I could step in. A few elements that were approved and completed were the rear deck was installed over an existing addition. There was resurfacing of the front facade, cleaning and restoration of the brick facade. And let me see what else.
But what was proposed for the fence?
And for the fence, there was nothing shown.
Nothing shown.
Yeah, there was an existing
The
to
old
remain.
fence in the
Yeah,
photo,
so that was
you
one
know,
of the elements
that
not
had
included.
like time.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
So I have to say, with the owner not coming to explain why they totally disregard that. Okay, well, then I would like to hear an answer. Was this that he didn't tell the contractor, you better follow the drawings or landmarks will come down on us, that he didn't, or have somebody, or, I mean, I know he'd hired a previous architect, I know it's not you.
But I won't say don't shoot the messenger because I'm the new messenger.
Right,
Please,
but,
go ahead.
But, you know, something, it isn't ignorance. They applied for and got a permit. So something happened here and we're now dealing with picking up the pieces, and I want to understand why, because there are different reasons. I do have one other question. On the mechanical, you show the view from the front, but I think the relocated is much more visible from the side and the rear. And since the side is a street front elevation, is that the case? Am I understanding that correctly?
Pretty far back in order to see the units. You don't see them from Carlton, you don't see them from Dean per se at that facade.
It would have been good to have shown that. But if, what?
You can see them
Yeah.
clearly.
Eh,
Yeah, you can see them very clearly.
Right.
Yes.
So if the owner is on Zoom, could you please explain what happened?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So hi, how are you guys? I'm Matt Bader. I'm technically not the owner. I was the contractor who was hired by the owner, the previous owner, I should say. So I'm here to try to assist and do the best I can. The owner has, unfortunately for me and everyone, sort of disappeared. So I'm here to try to be a good guy and try to help get all this through.
Excuse me, you are the contractor who did this work. Could you clarify, please?
That's correct. Yes.
So did you just decide to make changes? Did the owner tell you to make changes? Why
Sure. So
isn't
that-
it following the?
Sure. So Arnie, maybe you could quickly show the before and after views, because I do think it's pretty clear that we restored the entire.
That isn't my question.
Well,
My
it is a little
question
bit of
is,
question.
we or the commission approved something, and what we got wasn't what approved. Who made the decision not to follow what was approved?
So-
Or the decision they wanted to change it and not go back to the staff and say, because of X, Y, and Z, we want to make these changes?
Sure. So just to be fair a little bit, I don't remember the first gentleman's name who asked the question. We're here today to discuss 4 issues that there's a discrepancy as to whether they're approvable or not. It's not as if the entire scope of work.
But
was
you're not
followed.
answering my question.
Well, your question
For
is
these
very
four-
open-ended. You're saying all the changes. It can't
My
just.
question is, when we approve or the staff approves drawings,
Yes.
we expect it to be built to the drawings.
Yes. So for example.
And if you don't build them to the drawings, you should, before you do that, go back to the staff and say, because of X, Y, Z, we want to make a change. Clearly, you didn't do that. Why not?
Okay. So, for example, the plans that were approved by you guys specify Monda 6000 windows. We installed those exact windows. So it's a little unfair to say we didn't follow the plan. We did follow the plan.
You did not follow the elevation of the arch on the window. That is not what was specified in the approved plan.
I would
That is
argue that there was no
incorrect.
specification. There's no detail on there. I was supposed to interpret a tiny 3-inch arch on a drawing. There's no clarification on the drawing. There's no dimension on the drawing. There's no scale on the drawing. There's nothing on the drawing.
Basically everyone else who comes before us doesn't have this problem. So anyway,
I'm not an
thank you.
architect. I'm not an architect. The architect
Well,
didn't
there
stick it out,
was
and
an
you guys
architect
approved
who-
it. But you guys approved it.
But you didn't build what we approved. Thank you.
I would argue that I did. The dunnage on the roof cannot be seen from the side of the building, as Arnie showed in the picture. It cannot be
We
seen
see
from
it in the
across the street on
photo.
the side.
We
That's
see it
the
in the
rear of
photo.
the building.
You
It
can see
cannot
it
be
from the
seen from the
street.
side or the front. The rear of the building has 50 feet of a backyard. You cannot see it from the side of the building. So it's unfair to say that you can when you cannot. The picture clearly documents that.
Regardless of all this.
Regardless, that's the problem.
Hang on. I'm speaking. Regardless of all this back and forth, the gentleman who identified himself as the contractor stated the owner has disappeared. Is that an issue for us?
It's an issue for me.
I don't know.
I understand that.
The short answer to the question, Commissioners, it doesn't matter. This was work that was approved.
Yeah.
This was work that was approved. It needs to be done.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that there's a new owner that is now saddled with this, and maybe this contractor's on the hook from the new owner. I don't know what's going on, but that's not really our concern per se, you know, and this work was just finished, and I think you should look at it as if it's coming to you for the first, in the first instance, and whether you think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioners, if we don't have any other questions, let's move on and see. I'm going to note that there's nobody in the room who is here to speak on this item. So let me turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Participants on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your hand. The first speaker will be Historic Districts Council.
This is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC does object to the extent of deviations from the commission-approved plans. In particular, the substitution of flat-topped windows in place of the approved segmented arch windows significantly alters an important defining feature of the building's historic character. We urge LPC to require the applicant to bring the work into full compliance with the originally approved plans. Thank you.
The next speaker is Christina Conroy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, we see no reason, based on appropriateness or extenuating circumstances, to legalize work done in non-compliance. The railings installed on the stoop have no relation to the style of the building. We suspect that the pre-existing masonry stoop railings, which are also seen in the tax photo, were not original. The building of this age and type, and with this style of historic cast iron newel post, would likely have had large cast iron balusters on the stoop. The plain ironwork at the side of the yard is also not appropriate. The historic ironwork should have been replicated, providing the required heft and detail, and the substitution of upper sash with straight heads for the approved shallow segmented arched heads has resulted in the loss of significant detail feature. A fact that many buildings in the row had previously lost their historic arched sash is even more reason that the historic design should have been installed as approved. Finally, the rooftop air conditioning units should have been replaced where they were approved, so they would not have been visible. Seeing them in conjunction with the profile of the mansard roof makes them especially distracting. Thank you, Commissioners.
Are there any other participants on Zoom wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 8 recommends denial unless the existing conditions are because the existing conditions are outside the style and character of the historic district. Oh, sorry, we do have a raised hand. Mary Shuford, I'll be promoting you to panelist.
Good morning. My name is Mary Shuford, and I'm representing the Prospect Heights Neighborhood Historic District, PHNDC. The application is to legalize window replacement, two rooftop HVAC units, visibility, stoop handrail, and gated main entrance, all side fencing, including both non-original metal and wooden stockade fencing. PHNDC has reviewed the plans provided by the current applicant, as well as PMW 24-0739, CNE 24-202150, and miscellaneous 24-04929 from the original application. It is clear that the applicant who performed the work deviated from the specifications that were approved in the original plans as well as in the amendments. LPC permits and approvals are part of a process that has been established to preserve the special architectural and historical character that contributes to an historic district as it was established. Compliance is important to the integrity of this process. The modifications that were made in the approved plans do not conform to the style, materials, and details that were part of the Prospect Heights Historic District. PHNDC therefore does not support legalization of any of the above listed items. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else joining on Zoom wishing to speak? Please raise your hand. Right, that's all.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to any of the comments?
I would hope that maybe some decision could be made about either proper screening of the AC units or relocating them, of course. And as far as the windows, I do see a huge difference, whether it's the Carlton Avenue facade versus the Dean Street facade, just because it's the building at the end of the landmarks district. And if that could be considered in your decision making.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? If not, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Mahan, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to start this item?
Right. Sorry, just organizing my notes. So let me just go through this. First, I want to say we've almost never had an applicant come in and say, well, it's not bad, but never give an explanation of what happened, besides the fact it wasn't built according to the drawings. And, you know, I'm just saying this up front. If somebody comes in and says, we really made a mistake, or my contractor did this without telling me, or something, here they filed, so there was no excuse not to know that they were under landmark rules. Now, with that being said, our standard is, what would we approve if you came to us before you did the work and said, here's what I want to do? And there are a number of things that are clearly not acceptable. So first of all, the window arch should have a curved top. I'm going to go through the things that are clear first. Second of all, the AC unit should be located where they were shown. If that is impossible and you say, why not just it's adjacent to a skylight, but you know, we couldn't support it or some reason, and here's the relocation, we need to see visibility, because clearly where they were located is much more visible. And this building has an issue. It's a corner building. So everything, all three sides are seen. So saying, well, it's on the rear side doesn't mean you can't see it from the street. So that needs to be worked on. On the wooden fence, it should be stained at a minimum to be less obvious. And I'm not sure of exactly what are the standards in terms of lattice, but that ideally should be met also. As to the metal fence on the side, I think, from what I can understand, there were a filial top piece that was not done with this. I would like to see those added. Finally, I'm not sure about the stoop. I can argue it either way, so I'm to be interested in what my fellow commissioners say. But in general, I would say we deny this.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I think, let's start with what is, if we were judging it today, I think what would be acceptable, obviously, that is that the black painted metal picket fence extension, and that's about it. Commissioner Ginsburg raised a good question about the stoop. I would like to hear the rest of the commissioners as well, whether you find it appropriate, because that I'm on the fence on that one. But in general, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Ginsburg.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward, actually, and I regardless of how we got here, I recognize that the disruption, they're replacing the windows, would cause to the interior and so forth, and it's too bad, but I think that what was approved needs to be what is followed, and it's also consistent with what we would approve today. So I think that the windows should be segmental arches as previously approved. I think that the HVAC equipment is too visible. We wouldn't approve that. It needs to move. I think the ornamental ironwork doesn't match or recall the historic, and that needs to change according to the approval. The wood fence needs to be addressed, and like others, I find the extension of the historic painted areaway fence to be acceptable, but everything else needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
The fact that this is the last building in the district, I think the way it was argued is the opposite of how I see it. I see it as the first. And if you look at this neighborhood and understand the neighborhood, this is the drastic change of scale to this historic district. This corner represents the start of the historic district, and it is essentially the face of it. The side, which continued to be called the back, is actually the front. There's fronts. There's two fronts. The rear is also very visible. We've got very clear guidelines about how to study what is visible from the sidewalk public way, and those rules should be followed. There was a plan indicated for the mechanical rooftop equipment, but conveniently left off the dimension of how much it was in violation, and there were no views to support it. I think that has to be moved. Actually, I think every item on this, I feel, needs to be changed to be what was approved. The stoop guardrail, which was not that well documented as to what was built, doesn't look to me in keeping with what we would approve. It lacks the heft and weight and expression that one might see in this condition. I could accept it for this style, but the weight in terms of having a metal guardrail, but the articulation of this one, I don't think meets the standards that we would accept for a historic condition like this.
Thank you. Commissioner Ikumbe?
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Shu in stating that not only is this a corner building, that it is also the entry into the district, and it should be held to a scrutiny and be as high performing as possible. That being the case, I'm also in agreement of denying this application and believe that it should be brought up to the extent in which the original approval set. And also for the stoop, just because it matches the not the existing, the next door neighbor, that requires more justification. I would need to see more study to make that type of determination. So I will default back to what the original approval stated.
Thank you. Commissioner Walter?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Chu hit it on the head. I was thinking the exact same thing. This is the first building that you're looking at, and it sort of sets the example of what the district should look like. And as it's, it's weird that these things are being proposed as work that was already done, versus it being just fresh, where we could have had a discussion and figured out better ways or more acceptable ways of doing this work. But I think the lack of attention to the seriousness of the application and this building to the district, I don't think it really helps the application. And even I find it very difficult to fully examine these items based on these circumstances, because we're looking at real conditions that are based on things that we know are not going to be there. And the only thing I could possibly consider would be the railings, but without the full context of what this building would look like, I couldn't find anything appropriate.
Thank you. So I think you've heard the commissioners and their comments. So I think that this motion would be a denial. And you've heard the comments about the segmented arch windows, the HVAC, the ironwork, the stoop, and the fence. Thank you. So, oh, we're going to read the denial? Okay. Well, Commissioner Mahan, can you do me a favor and read the denial?
I can always do you a favor, Commissioner Master. Okay. Let's see. Are we going to approve the picket fence, or are we going to do the denial? Okay. Regarding LPC 25-11236, 555 Carlton Avenue, Prospect Heights Historic District. A second empire style row house built circa 1869 to 1880. Application is to legalize the installation of windows, ironwork, HVAC units, and fencing in non-compliance with Certificate of No Effect 24-02150 and Miscellaneous Amendment 24-09709. I recommend denial, finding that the straight-headed windows at the primary facades do not match the segmental arches of the historic windows and masonry openings, which are a significant feature of the building's fenestration, that the rooftop HVAC equipment is highly visible over the rear facade when viewed from eastern vantage points along Dean Street, and the proposed mechanical screening would introduce additional bulk that overwhelms and detracts from the rear facade and streetscape. That the ornamental ironwork at the stoop does not match or recall the historic ironwork found on this row house or others in the row, including extant railings at other stoops on the block, and it is not simple enough to harmonize with remaining historic ironwork at the building. That the unfinished wood stockade fence along Dean Street is not in keeping with areaway fencing found elsewhere on the streetscape or throughout the district, and has an obtrusive presence in the streetscape, and that the work detracts from the special architectural and historic character of the building and the Prospect Heights Historic District, and further that the black painted metal picket fence extension should be refined in accordance with the previous approval as well.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Commissioner Pugh,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
7 in favor and none opposed. The motion passed.
That's been denied. Let's move to the next item.
All right, the next item is public hearing item number 4, LPC 26-09561, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 635, Lot 15, 39 Bethune Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a Greek Revival style house built in 1846, and the application is to construct an elevator enclosure at the rear facade.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Charles Henkels. We're the architects for this townhouse, 39 Bethune Street. It's a wonderful 1846 townhouse that has been adapted back to its original use as a single-family house. And it was renovated about 30 years ago by a developer who converted the adjacent Pickwick House into housing. And this was a related property that became single-family housing. It's on the western edge of the historic district. These are photos of it in different stages. This was used as the offices when it was Pickwick Paper Company, which is the large loft building to the east. And that blocks all the sight lines from the block east of the site. Looking from the west, there are row houses going over to Washington Street. Again, the row houses block the sight lines from the west. The most likely place of visibility, this is from looking down on the subject property. It's at the bottom right of the screen. At the middle center, you can see the Liechtenstein building, which is the lowest of the surrounding buildings. You can see the buildings to the south at the left in the photo are bigger and block all the sight lines from there. There is an existing greenhouse, and we came to you a couple of years ago and received permission to replace the greenhouse, which is in poor condition, with a new greenhouse. But the owner's health has deteriorated, unfortunately, and he now needs an elevator in order to remain in the house. Now, the greenhouse encloses an atrium space, and you can see through the foggy plexiglass and glass that the original punched windows of the townhouse are all intact. And at the lower level, that takes the form of Juliet balconies, and the atrium goes down to the lowest level of the townhouse. He likes this very much because it brings sun into the house. And in the photos at the second level, those windows are his study, and that's where he spends most of his daytime hours. And that's, you know, illuminated by the greenhouse. We propose to bring an elevator in. This is the worst case view from above the Liechtenstein building. And you can see the red brick wall in the background is the Pickwick House. So there's no visibility from Washington Street. Looking down on the block, you can see the subject property is outlined in red. It's surrounded by larger buildings on all sides. So the visibility at the rear is just from a few rear yards around it. Again, in this diagram, the red buildings are all large. There's really no significant visibility. Existing and proposed, the atrium goes down to the cellar level, and the elevator would be located within the atrium, and that gives some access to all 4 floors. The first floor again has the atrium, and we're trying to maintain the glassy quality of the greenhouse. At the second floor, you can see again the atrium with the inserted elevator. And curiously, you can see there's some little connections that on the bottom right that actually used to go to the Pickwick House, and they're sealed up. Nobody can go in there. They're just sealed up. They're not used anymore. But they date back to when it was offices for Pickwick House. And it would go up to the top floor, which is where his bedroom is. There are no sight lines from the street. The greenhouse would be within, there's a terrace at the second floor level. So it would begin at the cellar level and go up to the top floor. Again, no sight lines from the street. The design is intended to relate to the greenhouse. So it's a metal structure with fire-rated glass. Very, very clean, straightforward, reversible. And the existing and proposed, it would have stucco. The original brick on the back of the house has been parged. It can't really be removed without damaging the brick, but is in good condition. So we propose that the opaque areas of the elevator would relate to the back wall of the house. And the original punch windows are all visible inside the house and outside. And we have a small copper standing seam roof on top of it. The house has a low-pitch build-up roof, not visible from anywhere really, aside from overhead buildings, but it's not architecturally developed. We didn't want to do that. We did something that's a little bit that looks, simple, metal. The windows are divided mainly for give it a little bit of an industrial and practical sensibility. The finishes would be factory black and stucco to match the back wall of the house.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Mahan?
I was curious why there's so much glazing on the elevator shaft. Is the elevator cab glass as well?
Well, the owner likes the sunlight. It's very important to him. And it'll be a glass cab. And he wants to be able to ride up and down and experience. The terrace actually is quite pretty. He has landscaping back there. And it's a big part of his daily, enjoyment of the house. And for him, this is a question of he needs an elevator if he's going to be able to remain in the house. and that's, you know, his wish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
The elevator pit seems to be very deep. Am I missing something here? It looks like it's,
No, it's actually only about a foot below the cellar floor. The atrium goes down to the cellar, and he has a wine tasting
Oh.
room down in the cellar, and so it would go down, and it's only a foot below the cellar level. So
okay,
it,
that answers. And then the top of the elevator shaft, is there any functional reason for that sloped roof, or is it purely decorative?
purely decorative.
Thank you.
It doesn't, this is a small residential elevator. It'll be a custom cab that's wood and glass, but the equipment is in the shaft itself and doesn't take up very much space. There will be some equipment at the top, so we need a little bit of an overrun above the top floor, but we don't need to do the hipped roof. That's, you know, just an aesthetic.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that what you're doing is on the ground floor and the second floor, you're replacing the original fenestration in the rear facade and replacing it with the glazing, other than the elevator.
So the original fenestration, the windows on the back of the house all remain.
Oh,
And
okay.
there are, within the atrium, at the first floor, there are French doors, and they're little Juliet balconies.
Mhm.
So the bottom of the atrium is at the cellar level.
Okay.
And where the plants are, it's all landscaped.
Mhm.
And so the pattern of the historic punched windows in the back wall goes right down to the cellar level.
Mhm.
And at the first floor, it's these French balconies, and they're bridges that go across the atrium to get to the terrace and to get to the kitchen and dining area. Yeah, I should say the original easternmost window becomes the door to the elevator. And so we just dropped the step,
Okay.
and that will be a door at each floor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, let's see if we have anybody here in the room who would like to speak on this item. Noting that there isn't, let me turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Participants on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I'll note for the record. Oh, sorry, Historic Districts Council.
This is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. While HDC does not object to the construction of this elevator enclosure, we did question some of the design details. The enclosure's roofline profile and materials, particularly the amount of glazing on the enclosure, seem to conflict with the historic character of the house. We encourage the applicant to further refine the design and explore a more contextually sensitive approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other participants on Zoom wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, I'll note that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval.
Thank you. Did you want to respond to the comments? Did the applicant want to respond? Okay.
Well, yeah, I just would say that we see this as an attachment to the greenhouse. And the greenhouse was added 30 years ago. It may or may not be the best solution, but it's reversible. The rear wall of the house is all intact and will remain so. This has very minimal structural implications. And you know, these townhouses go through different owners. The next owner may want something different. This is all reversible and very straightforward. And it really is mostly to bring sunlight into the back of the townhouse. It doesn't otherwise get that much light. There's a large building on the east side. There's a large building on the south side. It's intended to be a transparent glazed element that is a bit of an addition, very neutral.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? Okay, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Akumbe, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Chen, would you like to start this discussion?
Yeah, I think this is about time that you can increase accessibility for the owner. I can totally understand the applicant's situation. The only comment I would add is the administration that the tower be modified.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
In general, I agree with Commissioner Chu. I can find it appropriate. It would be good within the window system to maybe reduce the window a little bit and have something at the floor levels to indicate that it isn't just a continuous curtain wall, but there is some design indication, but that can be done working with staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
I agree with the previous comments. Overall, found appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Akumbe?
Yes, always about providing the accessibility to the owner. I would also state that the fenestration should be revisited. It's an odd condition, and I believe it can be worked out to achieve something that is pleasurable to both the commission and the owner. I would also state that the termination of the shaft is odd. No, if you could work with staff to look at that again.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
I think that the addition of the elevator is appropriate. I think my only comments are the design of the vertical volume. I agreed to not do the roof, do a flat roof. My comments about the fenestration is that it, I think the applicant even mentioned it's about bringing light in. I can appreciate that. I would say try to take some of the precedent. If I look at the divided light windows next to it, for me, it's more of a question of scale and just articulation. There was actually a picture of the Liechtenstein Foundation in the addition on top. I think the thing that's nice is this sense of the divided scale lights, and that would bring this to more of a residential feel.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I concur with Commissioner Chu.
Commissioner Chu, could you just state one more time the revision you're suggesting for the fenestration at the tower?
That it be divided to smaller scale lights so that it recalls maybe more of the sort of industrial warehouse aesthetic that I think is appropriate here.
But the opening size
The openings are it's too big. It needs to be reduced, and the size of the lights needs to be smaller, divided.
Thank you.
So
You should read it.
It's an approval with modifications of the light, working with staff perhaps, and reviewing some of the comments. What about
I think it's to flatten the roof. I think there were a couple of comments about the pyramidal roof, to remove that and do a flat roof, and then to, I think, lessen the scale of the opening and increase the density of the muntins to have a more industrial character or relate to the building's windows at the top floor.
Just as a recommendation, if you take the houses divided light next to it and use the proportions, you would end up with a smaller opening potentially, and that's the intent. intent.
Need to work with staff.
In the matter of LPC 26-09561, 39 Bethune Street, Greenwich Village Historic District. The application is to construct an elevator enclosure at the rear facade, recommending, noting the building style, scale, materials, and details among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work at the rear of the building will not be visible from any public thoroughfare, that the proposed addition of an exterior elevator enclosure will provide barrier-free access throughout the building without diminishing any significant architectural features, that the proposed volume of the tower relates to the functionality of the elevator and recalls historic Ls often found at the buildings of this scale and type within the historic district. That the modification to existing window openings at the rear facade will involve minimal removal of plain masonry below the sill without changing their width or lintels. That the proposed stucco finish of the elevator enclosure will match the color and the texture of the building's rear facade, that the proposed work will not detract from the special architecture and historic character of the building and the Greenwich Village Historic District. However, I find that the multi-story window on the elevator does not relate well to the typical fenestration patterns on L's or rear facades within the block, that the conical shape of the roof on the elevator addition is atypical of the character of rear L's. That therefore I recommend that applicant work with the staff to study the fenestration. The tower be modified to denser punch openings related to the floor levels, and that the conical roof be made flat in consultation with staff.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you. And Commissioner Chu, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder. 7 in favor and none opposed, the motion passed.
Okay, that's been approved with modifications. Please work with staff on the fenestration and the top of the elevator. Thank you. Let's move to the next item.
Right, next item is public hearing item number 5, LPC 26-08905, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1029, Lot 23, 215 West 57th Street, the American Fine Arts Society Individual Landmark. This is a French Renaissance-style institutional building designed by Henry Janeway Hardenberg and built in 1891 to 92. The application is to install signage and light fixtures.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Sergio Diarbeta, Principal at Walton Melvin Architects, and we are the architect of record for the ongoing restoration work at the Art Students League. The purpose of today's presentation is to respectfully request approval to carve incised lettering beneath the second floor water table on the West 52nd Street facade above the main entrance with the words, "The Art Students League of New York," and to light those letters with downward facing low profile light fixtures affixed to the underside of the water table. The carving of the letters would be done by Shijia Chen, who's a master carver and longtime instructor at the league. These are, on the right is a photo from the 1950s. On the left is the designation photo from 68. You can see on the right-hand photo the existing condition right now. It's wood letters glued to the facade. painted gold. This was according to the league's own archival records, this was a cost-saving measure. Originally, in the 1950s, they wanted to introduce lit cast bronze lettering, but that never happened. However, we think that both the cast bronze lettering and the existing wood letters are just not in keeping with the original intent of the building, or the architect for that matter. The building already uses incised lettering features with the words painting, sculpture, and architecture above the third floor windows on those transom panels. The fact that, you know, sculpting and carving is taught at the building and has historically been a trade that's been taught at the building since its early beginnings. This has been the home of the league since 1892. Yet last year they celebrated their 150th anniversary. And even the fact that, you know, Hardenberg's, one of his president's studies for the building, the original architect, according to a 1904 January to June architectural record article, it mentioned that president's study also used incised letterings over the main entrance. So I think we'd be in keeping with even Hardenberg's original intent. This is a view of, on the left is the existing condition with the wood lettering. The span is roughly 23 feet. On the right is the proposed incised lettering with a span of about 17 feet and change. The font for the proposed lettering is directly based off of the, I'm going to jump this one for now because I want to get to this one and then we'll come back. It's directly based on the fonts for the incised lettering above the third floor. We did rubbings on the facade and then measured those and used those to inform the templates. And then, which the template is on the top, and then at the bottom is a mock-up by Chen, the master carver that I mentioned earlier, of just 3 sample letters and how that would look. These are the existing letters. We couldn't find any mechanical fastenings. They're just completely just glued to the facade. A lot of them were just kind of decaying significantly and falling apart. We have salvaged them, however, until the commission renders a decision. And we intend to give them to the league for archival storage regardless. This is the lighting fixture that the lighting designer has proposed. There will only be fixtures where there is proposed lettering. It's not that like it's intended to wash the entire facade. It's only intended just for the lettering. It would be, like I said, affixed to the underside of the water table. That cable run, these are low voltage cables, so they're really small diameter. That cable run is not being drilled through the limestone itself. It's through the joint. It looks really aggressive, but we're going through the joint, so we're not drilling the actual limestone. And then the fixture would be custom colored to match the limestone. That's it.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Where the letters are right now,
Yeah.
I guess they're attached. And so is that going to be smoothed over or repaired before you carve out the letters?
Yes. So we removed, as part, the scope for the ongoing restoration work, in addition to the ornate carved limestone Dutchman and new tile roof on the mansard, We've also been doing Rotec Vortex microevasive cleaning for the whole facade, ground floor to roof level. And we did clean this area. There is still some ghosting occasionally of all that carbon buildup. And the intent is to retool the limestone to get rid of that ghosting so that it doesn't detract from the incised lettering.
Thank you. Commissioners, does anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Mahan?
Is the new carved lettering being filled with anything, gilding or anything?
We thought about gilding. We even did a mock-up. We didn't like it. We didn't think it was in keeping with the building. And also the carver, we got feedback from the carver saying that it was really difficult to get it in all the nooks and crannies. So it was dismissed as an option.
And the existing incised lettering, is that gilded? It says painting.
It is not. This is the existing lettering. Photos were taken during the process of Rotec vortex cleaning, so some of the stone areas are still wet or in process of cleaning. So,
one final question. I was curious if you have a signage designer or a letter setter or anyone like that on the team that is working with you in terms of the typesetting.
no, I mean, we based the font entirely on rubbings on the existing incised lettering.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Could you go to the image with the light fixture?
Yes.
I guess I'm just concerned how visible the light fixture is, because there's a very prominent and beautiful egg and dart pattern right underneath this, and I'm afraid that's going to block it.
Yeah, I don't disagree that that's potentially an issue, but from the angle of looking at the water table underside from the street, if you're walking from the street, I still think that you'll be able to see the egg and dart detailing for this section above the main entrance, and then flanking both sides of the signage, you'll be able to see it in full.
Was there ever an option studied where the fixture wasn't so attached to the facade and floated away as clearly a separate minimal element?
No, we did explore that. The lighting designer did look into multiple fixtures, trying to get the one with the lowest profile possible. And this was the best one that was presented. He also wanted a fixture that could be angled properly to make sure that he was getting the right lighting effect on the lettering, so the letters would render well with the shadow lines in the incising at night. So it'll allow for some adjusting after installation. So that was important to him.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, let's see if there's anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item. I guess there isn't. Let's turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Participants on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your hand. The first speaker will be Christina Conroy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society. Now, we testify in support of this application. The VSNY would typically oppose permanent physical alterations to historic material of the kind proposed here. However, because the building continues to be occupied by the organization for which it was built 134 years ago, we think such a change is appropriate in this case. The applicants have presented a tasteful and period-appropriate alteration. We appreciate that the font for the new text on the facade will match what is already there, and the lighting will nicely accentuate this new lettering while remaining unobtrusive. Thank you, Commissioners.
Are there any other participants on Zoom wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 5 recommends approval.
Thank you. It looks like the comments were generally supportive. Commissioners, do we have any final questions? If not, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second? Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Ikumbe, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. Overall, I'm going to state that I do find it appropriate to solidify the name of the building and in its use for which it has been for so long. I do find that it's appropriate. I also commend the applicant for using the existing context of the building, in particular the lettering, to find something that's appropriate to be etched into the facade. Also, I find that the lighting positioning it's inconspicuous enough, and I believe it would be a nice touch.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with the building. I think it's definitely an improvement of what is there, and agree with all of the points previously raised. I think this should turn out to be a really nice project.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree with my fellow commissioners. I'm going to make two notes. One is many years ago when I was in school, we had an English letter carver came and explained how letter carving versus using a power tool is a much better long-term, but also is a real art. So I appreciate that you're doing it the right way. The second thing is the location of the light means there will be no uplighting, and so that conforms to dark skies, which I appreciate.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Along that line, I also appreciate that it's long overdue. I think it's a more appropriate material, but I do share the several commissioner, including Commissioner Chu's concern about the lighting detailing and not to detract from the historic element. So I leave it in your hands to take a careful look at it.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I think this is very nice. I find the justifications for replacing the applied lettering with incised lettering to be appropriate, and it's a lovely idea that one of the longtime instructors there will execute the work. I have two suggestions for the commissioners and staff to consider. Typography, design, and letter setting is more nuanced than designers like myself would like to acknowledge sometimes. The kerning and sort of spacing between letters and cap height and how they relate to one another is its own art. And I would suggest that the applicant at least review the design for these kinds of nuances with a typographer or a signage designer. What's proposed is quite permanent. The second, I'm a little unsure about the visibility of the light fixture. I understand the desire to light it. I guess it looks quite small in this view, but perhaps a mock-up could be reviewed with staff, even just made out of plywood or something like that, to review not only the sort of size and scale, but also what color is it. It's in shadow, but it is up against the stone work. Should it match the stone, et cetera? Should it be dark, et cetera? So I think that could be evaluated with staff, but I can find this appropriate with those two suggestions.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I have the same exact feeling. I think that the proposed lettering is elegant, but I also, having worked very closely with typographers, there's half the millimeter adjustments that they're trained to see why certain nuances need to be added, and I would recommend a review of that type before it's permanently etched into the building. From my eye, it looks nice, but I just think that would help. The other thing is, yeah, I think that the applicant can work with staff on just the visibility and color selection of the lighting. Typically, when we do this, oh, hello? Went out. Okay. Hello?
Oh, I think we all went out.
Yeah, everybody. I know it was easy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. A typical application is uplighting because the sill hides the view, and this is not typical, so I just think it merits a mock-up, as Commissioner Mahan suggested. It's not that hard. I think the dimension is 2 inches and change and 1 and change, small rectangle.
Thank you. So Commissioner Ikumbe, do you want to read the motion in and then just have them, work with staff on the details of the lighting? And then, if the applicant wishes to, they can consult a typographer. Thank you.
All sign and light fixtures. I recommend approval. Start from again. I recommend approval, finding that the details, lettering style, and spacing of the proposed incise letterings at the frieze above the central entrance will match historic incise letterings found in paneling at the top of the facade and at institutional buildings of a similar age and style. That the proposed letter spacing, which is tighter than the existing, will better relate to the facade and the adjacent piers. That the proposed linear downlight fixture will be finished to match the limestone water table and integrally located along the continuous drip edge, thereby receding from view, and that the work will enhance a special architectural and historic character of the building. I note that the applicant should also work with a typographer or signage designer to confirm the incise lettering, and that the applicant work with staff to create a mock-up for the lighting to confirm site visibility and coloring.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chu, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder. With 7 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that's been approved. I guess with modifications. Please continue to work with staff on the details of the lighting. But that's been approved. Thank you. Okay. So now that concludes our morning session. We're going to break for lunch. It is about 12:32, so let's return at 1:05 and resume the afternoon session. We're going to ask all members of the public on so that you don't experience technical difficulties returning to the afternoon session that can arise